Hello, thanks for being in a new video. This time I have an unboxing of the REDMAGIC Titan Pro, the first computer from REDMAGIC, which is a manufacturer that if you are familiar with smartphones, you will have very well located. So let's get to know what it can offer us in the world of laptops. Because it has done very well with cell phones, it's time to get to know another proposal. Let's get started. I must tell you that this computer is not yet on sale globally, but from August 22, it will start a period in which users will be able to pay a small deposit to get other benefits in return. And finally, on August 29th, it will go on sale officially. So if you want to take advantage of additional benefits and have other gift accessories, you can obviously go to the link that I leave you in the description, which is the official REDMAGIC store. Let's then take this computer out of the box so we can know in detail what comes in the box and the specifications of this model. And well, one important thing you should know is that it is a large computer. In fact, that's why its box is also quite big. It comes with a quick start guide where there's regulatory information about the ports and the keys, some basic stuff. In this box that's on the left side, we're going to find your charger. And this power adapter is rated at 280 watts to provide the graphics card with a lot more power when it's plugged in. As you can see, it's a considerably large block, very similar to what we see in various gaming computers. So, in this sense, from my point of view, it doesn't get to be all that amazing because the computer is heavy and also its power adapter is quite heavy. So let's take the computer out of this box so we can finally get to know it. In this case, the only color that we have available globally is this one that I have here, which is called Eclipse. It's an extremely nice looking computer, very sleek. This black color tone gives it a special touch. Although I must say that the fingerprints of your fingers are quite marked. That's a small detail that I noticed. As you can see, it has the REDMAGIC name on the hinge. And on the lid, it also has the REDMAGIC logo, which of course when you have the computer unfolded, it's going to turn on RGB lights. Now, that's all that comes in the box. It's a simple box that doesn't include a case or any special accessories. So let's forget about the box for a while and focus on the specs of this computer. Right off the bat, I should tell you about the physical aspect. For example, its thickness in the thinnest area, which is the front, reaches 13 millimeters. But obviously, the rest of the body of the computer will be much thicker, reaching 23.99 millimeters in the thickest area. It weighs 2.4 kilograms. Like many high-powered computers, it is not characterized by being very light and ultra-thin or anything like that. Since its main focus will be to have raw power, it's got two tremendous fans in the back, 4 copper tubes to dissipate all the heat that's generated. So this will be your top priority. To give tremendous cooling to your device so you can have prolonged gaming with very high quality graphics. On the back, as you can notice, is its power connector. Also the Thunderbolt 4 USB-C port. And this one, interestingly enough, also supports 100-watt power delivery charging. So if you want to get it charging really fast, you could use this connector. It also has HDMI output specifically in the 2.1 version, and finally a USB-A 3.2 Gen 2 port and the Ethernet connector in case you want to have even more stability when you're playing online. On the left side, I like that they incorporate another USB-A port plus an SD card reader. So also for video editors, for example, it would be a very useful tool because it has very good power to work with and it has a good variety of ports. And on the right side, we have another USB-A port and finally the 3.5 millimeter jack for microphone and headphones. Notice that the computer does have a one-handed opening. This is the only keyboard layout available. So if you are from Mexico, for example, you might miss the letter Nin. If you are from some other countries where you require some other letter, obviously you can use it by selecting a different layout in Windows, but physically this is the only layout available. The power button is in the corner along with the REDMAGIC logo. Immediately we notice that the keyboard is RGB, in addition to the logo that is on the hinge, and as I say, also the logo that is on the outer cover. It is also worth noting the addition of the numeric keypad. Obviously, being such a large computer, that's a positive thing. Although the trackpad honestly is not that big, but that's a common denominator in many gaming computers, where I guess they are more convinced that users will connect an external mouse, so the trackpad is not that big. although it does have a fairly comfortable click, and even with a premium feel, only the top does not support click. The camera is full HD, so you can have good quality video calls, or you could even get to stream directly using this camera. But the highlight here is that it also has a Windows Hello compatible system for 3D facial recognition, something that few gaming computers incorporate. So it is a small detail that can give you a little more security, since in this case it does not incorporate fingerprint reader, which is another of the absences that is usually seen in computers of this style. So since we do not offer fingerprint reader, it is positive that they offer this facial detection system. As you can see, the camera is going to be simple in terms of image quality. For example, it does not have a very advanced treatment of backlight, but for video calls it is very good. Perhaps to make streams you will have to buy a separate camera. The screen offers us 16 inches in diagonal. We're looking at an IPS panel with a 16:10 ratio. So I think for gaming it's an adequate ratio. It offers us 2.5K resolution to give the extremely detailed images, and it has 240 Hz in its refresh rate. So definitely the gaming experience is going to be exaggeratedly smooth. It covers 100% of the DCI-P3 spectrum and offers 500 nits of brightness. It has an anti-reflective finish as well, which can help quite a bit if you're gaming in environments with a lot of light behind it. For example, in this case, there is a window in front of the computer, and as you can see, it reflects very little. That's something I quite liked about this device. Although the speakers are located at the bottom, this is another aspect where most gaming computers tend to sacrifice, so the sound bounces off the table before traveling to our ears. Also, interestingly in this case, I find that the high frequencies are very soft. Therefore, the sensation it gives of the sound is of little clarity. Although, like what I said with the trackpad, it is likely that REDMAGIC knows that most gamers will prefer to play with headphones and microphones connected. But it's time to talk a little more about the performance-focused specs, which will surely be what catches your attention the most. So we will find the 14th generation Intel Core i9 processor. The specific model is 14900HX. It has 16 gigabytes of RAM, although you can extend it up to 32 gigabytes. So even though it doesn't have a tray or slot for easy access to modify those parts, it is possible. The RAM is DDR5 with 5600 MHz in its frequency. And with respect to storage, in this case it is 1 terabyte. Note that its partition distribution is quite curious, because usually in the C disk they put very little capacity and in the D disk they put more capacity. But REDMAGIC has done the opposite. Disk C has a capacity of a little less than a terabyte and the remaining one is on disk D. That seemed to me a bit curious behavior. And when I just took the computer out of its box, it shows 730 free gigabytes on disk C and 171 free gigabytes on disk D. Although I installed some games and ran some benchmarks to make it a little easier to record this video. And then since we are talking about performance, you should know that REDMAGIC has an application called GoPer, through which we will be able to modify the performance profile we want this computer to reach. So if you want to be in office mode, it will give priority to a quiet environment without giving you much performance. There is also the balanced mode or gaming mode. Although interestingly enough, even though you go into gaming mode, there's still something else that you can enable if you want the maximum power possible, and it's specifically in the system settings section, where you can enable the option to set the fan to maximum power, and that's when the fans start to blare with a power that definitely gets to stand out and excel. Obviously, it's going to cause a little bit more noise, but you as the user can decide what behavior you want your computer to have. So I first ran Nova Bench with the computer unplugged in office mode, and note that it hit 2,161 points. On GPU it hit 486, on CPU it hit 916. So that's a considerably good score, in this case with the computer unplugged and office mode. Now, activating the gaming mode with the computer still unplugged, it reached 2,854 points. Note that GPU came in at 470 and CPU at 1,622. So specifically, the CPU had the most power, but the GPU remains at a very similar level. In this case, when unplugged from the power, even if you're in an office profile or you're in a gaming profile. But now look at the score it was able to give us when I turned on gaming mode with the computer plugged into the power. It went up to 4,135 points, so that's a huge improvement. The GPU went up to 785 points, while the CPU went up to 2,610 points. So every way you look at it, it's an extremely powerful computer. When it's plugged in, it will obviously reach its highest power points, but even unplugged it can give you a good experience in power. Now, we're also going to find in this same GoPair application an option to configure how we want the lights we see around the computer to behave. For starters, the keyboard. You can set 4 different lighting zones and you can select any of the 4 available effects, plus obviously the color selector and the completely specific brightness setting. In addition, you could also obviously turn off the keyboard completely without any lighting. And the same thing you can do in the logo area on the back in terms of choosing the different modes, the color and the brightness. Or also if you want to have that area turned off, you can do that. And also in the lettering area that's on the hinge part. So if it allows you to customize all those areas, it's time to play around a little bit to see how it performs. Now we started with Genshin Impact. At the moment the computer is plugged into the power supply and we have been testing it for a little while. In the review we will have much longer and more extensive tests so that we can analyze it in more depth. But for now, as first impressions, this device performs very well, at the height of what we expected from a REDMAGIC computer. 60 frames per second, practically with 100% stability, as you are seeing for yourself in the graph. And at the end of the test, it reached a temperature of 43 degrees Celsius on the outside. For a computer, that's actually pretty good. I think the fans are capable of cooling this computer well. And by the way, we played in balanced mode at all times. We never activated the gaming mode, nor did we activate the maximum fan power mode. We'll leave that for the review, but for now, let's also test the same game with the computer unplugged from the power. And apparently, it is power limited, but still maintains good stability. Average of 40 frames per second, we could say. At times, there are some low peaks, but it's really not a big deal. Though obviously you're going to have the best of experiences when you have this computer plugged into the power. But anyway, the performance was really very good. Remember that in this case we are playing with the default quality that this game loads. Let me know in the comments if for the video review you would like us to set a specific quality. We now move on to playing Fortnite again with the computer plugged into the power. I remind you that we are in balanced mode. We have not enabled full power gaming mode, and in this case the truth is that at the beginning it did manage to have a few stumbles, which is quite normal in Fortnite, although as I tell you in the review we will test with the maximum power mode to see if we manage to eliminate this type of frame loss. Here the important thing is that again the temperature stayed relatively low considering what we've seen on other computers that even get close to 50 degrees Celsius. So with an average of about 53 frames per second, it performed quite well. Although I insist it wasn't without some major hiccups, but it's not a very consistent thing. Once you're on the ground, the game stays much more fluid, unlike the stage where you're falling from the air. With the computer unplugged again, the experience will be acceptable, although in moments of quite a lot of action it does get a little slower with several falls. So this shows us that the ideal will be to play with the computer plugged into the power, because in very specific moments you could get to have a much slower experience than we would like, especially in these scenes with a lot of action. So it averaged about 25 frames per second at the default quality, but again the temperature remained remarkably low at 42.3 degrees Celsius. With eFootball, the experience will be quite smooth. During the game, the truth is that it is not a processing so extreme or so demanding, but in the repetitions is where the truth is that it is seen that it costs a little more. It reaches about 40 frames per second or so at the time of loading a replay. When the replay is over, it goes back to a much smoother scene again. In this case, again, the temperature was relatively controlled at 44.8 degrees Celsius. And unplugged is basically the same, but a few steps lower. I mean, again, in the replays is where it can get a little bit slower. And I would stress that we're playing in balanced mode, which is trying to find a balance between not consuming as much battery and giving you good performance. So if you want gaming mode, you can enable it, and you can also enable maximum fan power to make this all go much smoother. But even with the computer unplugged from the power, this game also gave us an overall good experience, averaging around 28 frames per second or so. And finally, we played Speedstorm, which is a simpler game and obviously will be able to get to a higher level of frames per second. So in this case, it got up to 144 frames per second on average, because there were times where it got up to over 200 frames per second. Obviously, it's a simpler game, so it doesn't struggle at all. It runs super smooth when the power is plugged in, and the temperature is even lower than previous tests. Obviously, because it's not such a demanding game. And on the other hand, we also played with the computer unplugged and evidently lowers its refresh rate so it doesn't drain the battery so fast. In this case, it reached an average of just over 60 frames per second. But again, the experience is quite smooth, so I guess when we turn on gaming mode and maximum fan power in the video review, we'll have an even more amazing experience. Let me know in the comments if you would like me to test any specific games, as these were very quick tests for now. But being a dedicated computer for gamers, we are going to spoil them with several gaming tests. For now, we have reached the end of this video, just first impressions and unboxing. I hope you liked it. If you did, please let us know and we'll see you next time.